When I was in my teens and 20s, I used to look around at all my blessings and fear the kind of day that befell Job at the beginning of this wisdom book in the Bible. From my own account, I was as lucky or blessed as the case may be as Job was. I had loving family, full health, fun friends, romantic prospects, an intelligent mind, financial means, transportation, ambition, and a pathway to reach my dreams and goals. I also had white privilege, though I didn't know it at the time. I considered myself to be an honest, upright, and faithful human who loved God and neighbor. I noticed not everyone else had as many blessings as I did. So I vacillated between wondering if my blessings were a reward from God for making wise decisions, or if my blessings were unattached to my behavior and personhood. I saw that some of the tragedy which befell those around me seemed to be undeserved and unjust. I feared a day when everything in my life might be taken away in one fell swoop. Over the years, tragedy, trauma, and suffering have indeed walked through my doorway, as I believe it has for every human being. I have lost and regained family relationships, financial stability, and health. I have loved and lost. I have survived the death of beloveds. The book of Job is one that speaks to all of these life experiences and more. Job is a wisdom story about a made-up character in a made-up place. Job is not a historical account of a particular human being's life, but rather an attempt from biblical writers to muddle through the very real-life experiences which befall us all when tragedy occurs through no fault of our own. Certainly, some tragedies are the result of our own hand or unwise choices, but that's not what this story is about. This book is about how we are to comfort those who suffer unjustly, about what we might say to and about God when bad things happen to good people. This story is bookended by a beginning and ending which troubles every single person I've ever spoken to about Job. It starts with the God Yahweh, who brags to one in the heavenly court about how honest and upright the servant Job is. Yahweh brags to the Satan, which is really a title instead of a name in this book. This title, the Satan, translates to the accuser. The Satan suggests that Job is only honest, upright, and faithful because Yahweh has blessed him with an abundance of family, possessions, and successful business ventures. The Satan wagers that if all these things were taken away, Job would no longer be honest, upright, or faithful. Yahweh accepts the bet and allows the Satan to destroy everything except Job's life. No wonder this prologue makes us uneasy and skeptical about divine proceedings. When I hear this description and play-by-play of the God in the prologue of Job, I say to myself, that's not my God. My God would never play with my life or loved ones as a cat plays with a mouse. Who wants to devote themselves to a deity who could be so cavalier and indifferent towards human suffering? The God described in this prologue may not match my understanding of God the Creator, but I still find great wisdom and comfort in this biblical text. My favorite verses occur early on in chapter 2. Immediately after Job loses everything, 3 of his friends come from afar. They weep when they lay eyes on Job, when they witness for themselves how bad off he really is. The friends join Job in the mourning customs of their culture, the tearing of clothes, the throwing of dust into the air and upon their heads. The friends sit with Job side by side for 7 days and 7 nights, which in the Bible means they sat for a holy and significant amount of time. They utter not a word because Job's suffering was so great. I adore these 3 friends thus far. From my perspective, they did the most loving thing one can do when a friend is suffering. They dropped everything and came over. They didn't try to comfort with platitudes or BS statements like, your loved ones died because God needed another angel in heaven. The friends made sure that Job was not alone. They witnessed his suffering. They joined him in solidarity. The minute I learned that my mom had passed away, I started texting and calling those closest to me. To a few, I simply texted, "My mom just died." I made phone calls to my mother's sisters and friends to break the news. Within minutes, 2 of my loved ones were pulling up in the driveway. With tears in their eyes, they hugged me and held my hand as I finished those hard phone calls. They sat with me in my silent, stoic shock. So often we stay away when tragedy occurs because we don't know the right words to say. But there are no words that can take away a loved one's pain, which is why it's often good to keep words to a minimum. But to be there in whatever way you can will mean the world to someone in grief. I wish Job's friends had kept their mouths shut. But if they had, we wouldn't have the book of Job. It's actually Job who breaks the silence. He opens his mouth and curses the day he was conceived and the day he was born. His grief and pain are so great that in this moment, he is willing to give back all the happiness of his life in order not to have to live through his current suffering. To our knowledge, Job is the only one of his friends who has experienced this particular tragedy. In the following 34 chapters, which include a back and forth dialogue argument between Job and his friends, we are never told that they have lived through anything like what Job is experiencing. And even if they had, that still doesn't mean that Job would experience his tragedy in the exact same way. I've learned that there are certain clubs that one becomes part of whenever a particular tragedy or trauma occurs. These are not clubs one wants to become a member of, but nevertheless, only those who are already members can really understand what you might be going through. There's the club of folks who know what it's like to lose a parent, those who make it to the other side of divorce, parents who have lost a child, those who've had the word stage 4 cancer spoken to them, people who have lived behind bars, have known addiction, rape, or homelessness. This is why support groups can be so beneficial. If anyone is to venture a word of challenge or hope, let it be someone who has lived through it. Eliphaz the Temanite is the first friend of Job, who says, "Would you be offended if someone ventured a word to you? On the other hand, who can be silent?" Eliphaz is not in the same club as Job. He has not had ultimate ruin befall his life, and Eliphaz's words betray his theology, as all our words do for each of us. From his response to Job, we can see that Eliphaz believes innocent people do not perish, upright people are not destroyed. Eliphaz sees Job's tragedy as a blast of God's anger against him. He believes Job must have done something wrong. Commentators across time have admitted that Job's friends have some bad theology. Of course, we usually label any theology that is not in line with our own as bad. Belief in Jesus will save you from the coronavirus, and that's why I don't need to wear a mask. Bad theology. Gay people are to blame when natural disasters like hurricanes and tornadoes befall communities. Bad theology. But here's the thing I noticed this week. I listened to the entire book of Job, read aloud, while driving back from visiting my dad and my mom's tombstone in Blackwell. As I listened for almost 2 hours, passing puffy clouds, farmland, and sweeping plains, I noticed the entire book hinges on back and forth dialogue, including a lot of bad theology. Even though I cringe at what the friends say to Job, I realize he was never left alone in his grief or his suffering. It might not have been the company he desired, but I started to wonder if it was because of this back and forth dialogue that Job was able to articulate and proclaim his experience, his innocent suffering, his anguish and turmoil, his prayers for relief. In our day, this back and forth might look more like a mile-long Twitter or Facebook thread. We usually say, don't read the comments, But the book of Job is all about reading the comments. I can't help but wonder, after reading the back and forth, whether Job remained friends with these three after his dark night of the soul was over. Did they sit with him? They did sit with him through the toughest time of his life. But who could blame Job if in the end he had to unfriend them? Maybe they came around. Maybe they agreed to disagree. Maybe their understanding of God and suffering underwent a transformation. Maybe Job made some new friends. The story is far from over, and next time we'll listen as Job laments and speaks directly to God about his hurts, anger, and fear. God will hear Job, and God will respond. In the meantime, let us meditate on what it looks like to be a good friend to those who suffer. May it be so.